Right. Well, welcome everyone. It is so strange and yet encouraging that we are able to do these webinars to keep people up to date on our work around the Piedmont region. I'm Chris Miller. I'm the president of Piedmont Environmental Council, and I have the honor of working with a great group of staff and board members and just members and volunteers who are doing amazing work all through our region. We really think it's valuable to the community for folks to get an insight into each of our counties, which is the way we're organized to work. And so today's presentation just tries to draw attention to both the history of conservation and planning and improving environmental quality in Clarke County and what some of the current projects are and what we're hoping to do in the future. So I guess that's me. We have a lot of staff that are involved in Clarke. Tracy Lind is in charge of our conservation work and work along the Blue Ridge and organizing the Blue Ridge Coalition. Jem Bingle is working in both Clarke and Loudoun counties and brings many years of experience with the most complicated land use issues in America, and also has the benefit of working with the best run county in America, in Clarke. So,
what a nice thing to say.
And then a new staff person, Matt Coyle, who's joined us in this new year and has been leading our efforts on food systems. All three of them are making huge contributions. And then we have George Orstrom speaking today about the history of sliding scale zoning in Clarke County. We're going to cover a range of issues from the local land use, land conservation work that we're doing, local farms and food. But in the midst of that are obviously some of the more complex pieces of those larger subject matters. And we very much want it to be a stimulating conversation, and we look forward to your questions at the end. We've been able to work through the COVID crisis because of the support that our members have provided over the years. We've actually had a remote platform for a couple of years, and boy did that turn out to be a good investment. We've been able to have the entire staff work at full bore from home. We've been able to support them. The board has been incredible in providing that support, and the community support of the organization has enabled us to keep working full bore. And that has been an amazing opportunity. The fundraising efforts never end. We will be having a virtual event that starts next weekend with an auction running for about a week. We're calling it a virtual house party. It's a great opportunity to directly support PEC's work, and in addition to supporting our general operations, there's going to be an opportunity to support our expanded efforts in the local food system and food security, something that's never been more important as we enter the sort of a 18-month cycle on the COVID pandemic and the disruption that has had in our food supply systems. So we hope you will participate. Great opportunity to continue to support our work. We have been, using the opportunity that COVID-19 and the current debate about systemic racism and other social change issues to take a hard look at our work and make sure that we are being continually responsive to the needs of our community. We think that there's going to be a renewed debate about housing, where it should be located, what it should include, question of affordability, sustainability, but also the distribution at the regional scale. We've been advocates for smart growth for a long time, and the challenge of smart growth in the COVID-19 era is very real. So we see a renewed debate coming on that. There's a debate about the structure of our conservation programs and are they equitable? Do they provide equal access to all parts of our community? Challenge in Virginia is that land ownership in the rural area is dominated by whites, by folks that have had the land ownership for a long time. And so the whole question of how we create equity within conservation is on the table. And that's all taking place at a time when we have a series of elections, federal elections this year, state elections next year, where leadership shift is going to be significant potentially. And so, one of the things we do is to stay very much involved in national and statewide coalitions that are tracking these issues, so we can better inform you about how things are evolving, what the debate is, and where the opportunities to participate can be. An example is the special session that's been underway since August 18th, originally scheduled for about a week. Now no end in sight. So an example of evolving governmental process. The Senate seems to be pretty well organized and has moved forward on a budget amendment and a few pieces of legislation. The House is disorganized and still hasn't figured out exactly how they're going to move forward. So we're in limbo. The range of projections is another week or two to the end of the calendar year. So we're just staying tuned and participating as we do. The focus of our concerns a bit on the structure of the budget, making sure that land conservation and restoration programs are fully funded. We're worried about legislative fixes that are, we feel would be premature because there's not been a full-fledged debate. But the central issue is, again, that question of, are there equitable measures in place to ensure that all folks have access to those programs and that the results are truly creating a public benefit. We certainly support that critique, but we believe that when you look hard, you will find that the programs have functioned very effectively and very efficiently and very fairly over the years. We need to expand the people that participate, but we don't need a wholesale change in the structure or the funding formulas. So that debate goes forward. Currently, we are really focused down on food systems, on planning for new open space and trails and connectivity, helping people participate in government, supporting investment in conservation as we have opportunities, all which is designed to demonstrate that our work is directly connected to the real experience of the people that live here, who visit here, who benefit from this region. And we've been very, very pleased with the response to those priorities. Folks have really seen the value of it. They're investing in it. They're supporting PEC. They're supporting the projects, and the results are pretty much the rest of this conversation. So I won't step on the others' presentations. I would highlight the cumulative effect of what we do. The great thing about our work on conservation is that it is permanent as we know how to make it in the current constitutional and legal structure of Virginia. As of 2019, there were about 421,000 acres of land permanently protected on the landscape. That's private land. An additional 150,000 acres or so are in public land management. And so, we're really far along towards the goal of protecting 50% for the rural economy and for nature, which has been the vision of PEC for a long time. That 500,000 acres is meaningful. Just the private component alone is twice the size of Shenandoah National Park. It's a significant size. But, the terms of the public benefits that accrue from that conservation, this is an infographic that provides some perspective on that. And I think demonstrates that collective effort over the last 2 generations has been incredibly impactful. We're currently working on a lot of big projects, Oak Hill, Fleetwood Farm. These are large-scale sort of anchor properties that we think will accelerate conservation in the area, and we're making some capital investments and trying to move these forward. There's tons of other projects of all sizes, and we work from the urban scale of a ½ acre or so all the way up to something like Fleetwood Farm, which is a 2,600 acre concept. And all of them are important in different ways. What's remarkable is during this time of change and crisis, the interest in these projects has never been greater. And the great news is we can demonstrate their impact. This is just a few shots from the Piedmont Memorial Overlook, which lies in both Clarke and Fauquier counties. This view is east towards Fauquier and Loudoun, all the way to Fairfax. And on a really clear day, you can see the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. We've put in a kiosk, which is in the lower left corner. That has helped a lot to tell the story of both the site and of the larger conservation goals and outcomes that we've been part of. And I think it's a great teachable moment, teachable place. We estimate that there are tens of thousands, maybe as many as 100,000 folks visiting the site each year. And this is a great opportunity to tell the broader story of our work. Part of what we're talking to people about when we get the opportunity is expanding public access in the area by trying to acquire Fleetwood Farm, which is on the market for 2,600 acres. It lies adjacent to the Thompson Wildlife Management Area, just to the south of the Sky Meadow State Park, and touches on parts of Sky Meadow. Really not quite a direct connection. We'll have to work that part out, but just the property alone offers opportunities for 20 miles plus of trails, stream restoration, whole lots of very, very positive things that could be added into the sort of cumulative total of about 8,000 acres of public access lands at the end of the Crooked Run Valley and as part of the Blue Ridge. So huge opportunity, huge lift, and we are doing our best to raise the funds to make that happen. Before we go any deeper, we want to take a step back and take a look at the effect of really thoughtful planning and zoning. Clarke County is a model for the rest of the country in being forward-looking and forward-thinking about how to balance urban and rural issues. And George Orstrom, who's our co-chair, but is also a member of the Planning Commission and a longtime resident of Clarke, is going to present some thoughts about the sliding scale zoning program in Clarke and how it's impacted conservation up to this point.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'd like to talk a little bit about sliding scale zoning and what happened, how it came about back in 1980. Actually, I think on October either 16th or 18th is our 40th anniversary of the actual enactment of or adoption of sliding scale zoning. I'm going to read you a history of sliding scale zoning, so please bear with me, and I think you'll find it very interesting. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the adoption of sliding scale zoning in Clarke County, Virginia. This type of zoning helps to keep large parcels of land intact by allocating fewer building rights for large tracts than for smaller tracts along a sliding scale concept. For example, in Clarke County, a parcel containing between 40 and 80 acres is allocated 3 houses, while a parcel containing over 1,030 acres, no matter how much larger than that, can only have 15 houses. The theory is that the larger the parcel, the more of an agricultural resource it represents, and thus the potential for non-agricultural use should be more limited. That is the actual philosophy behind sliding scale zoning. The people that bought it to our county back then saw what was happening in Loudoun County. It was being subdivided at a rapid rate. Our friend Bob Lee, who is everybody that's been part of the conservation movement in Virginia over the last 20 years knows who Bob Lee is, and he's presently on the Fauquier County Planning Commission. He was then the Clarke County administrator. He'd heard of the sliding scale concept when he was at graduate school in Cornell University. Pennsylvania's York County had already adopted that type of zoning to preserve the farmland. And when farmland preservation became a hot topic in Clarke County, he offered to take the Clarke County Planning Commission on a trip up there so they could actually see how it worked. In fact, York County had at that time recently withstood a legal challenge to their sliding scale zoning, which validated it as a reasonable zoning provision. Interestingly enough, the lady that Mancy and I purchased our farm from, Margaret Maisel, was the chair of the Clarke County Planning Commission then, just as I am today. There must be something in the well water here at the farm. She wrote a memo for a presentation to the Board of Supervisors about the possible effects of sliding scale zoning here in the county. She pointed out that the existing zoning density of Clarke County at that time was 56 people per square mile. She also stated that at that time in 1980, that was pretty much the density of the whole world. Margaret also made the case that while sliding scale would be considered more restrictive than the zoning rules that were in place at the time, which was by right 5-acre development, it may actually not be restrictive enough. She showed that after total build out, the zoning density of the county could be doubled, and then thus it was not the no-growth zoning that the adversaries of the policy claimed. One of the major points of her presentation was that historically the development patterns and density of this and most other Virginia counties were decided by the individual landowner and whatever they wanted to do, not through centralized county planning. If Clarke County implemented sliding scale zoning, they would have, for the first time, have a real handle on the amount of development, also its nature and its location it was likely to end up with. And this would lead to better ability to plan for growth. She ended her memo with the sentence, "This strongly suggests that sliding scale is a mechanism that heads in the right direction for farmland preservation, but that it is really a compromise and that more finite techniques are needed to achieve this valuable goal." Well, here it is 40 years later, and the idea that Clarke County might need something more restrictive than sliding scale zoning is quite funny to me. As the chair of the Planning Commission for the last 10 years, all I've ever heard from outside sources talking about Clarke County is that over there, they just say no. To quote from Bob Lee, sliding scale was Clarke County's Camelot moment, and it truly was. I personally don't think a restrictive downzoning of that magnitude would be passed today. So a resounding thanks to Bob Lee, Margaret Maisel, Jack Hardesty, Pete Dunning, Bob Mitchell, a lady named Velma Smith who was on staff at PEC, and all the others who worked so hard to get this passed years ago. While it isn't perfect, it has kept the county rural and agriculturally viable. And whenever one drives west over the mountain, one breathes a huge sigh of relief. The landscape is not only much more verdant, but it also seems more peaceful and less stressed. And most importantly, as I have often heard it said, sliding scale zoning only gets legally more enforceable and stronger every day that it exists. So that's the history of sliding scale. And I guess we'll save our questions for the end, or if anybody has questions right now, or I'm not sure.
I should wait till the end, George, just so that we can keep this flowing.
Okay, well, that's
yeah.
So I should quickly say about Margaret Maisel also,
Yeah.
as you reminded me, Chris, that she was also one of the first forerunners of GIS technology. And it was she actually pushed Clarke County into a rudimentary GIS technology because she, I believe, actually helped come up with the whole technological concept of GIS.
Yeah, it's an amazing person who advanced a lot of thinking on a lot of fronts. So
anyway, thank you everybody, and I'll turn it back to Chris.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've learned is that Clarke is full of innovators and full of really creative people. And so, this is actually just one of a few stories. If you later on, we have a slide referencing a story map for Clarke County, and Tracy has put together some wonderful examples of that creativity that's going on all through the county, and lots of individuals are leading that effort. We're simply helping to facilitate a lot of individual an individual creativity. So onward. Marco, who's sharing next?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we'll turn it over to Jen now. So Jen, if you
Yeah.
want to go ahead and share your screen, we can carry on.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jem Bingle, and I've been PEC's Clarke Land Use Field Officer since 2003. As Chris mentioned earlier, during the pandemic, PEC had to cancel public outreach events, and Tracy and I had been planning to do a partnered event with the county, Friends of Shenandoah, and Shenandoah University related to water quality and stream monitoring. Local governments across the state also have had to deal with the pandemic through the continuance of governance ordinances, many closing their doors to public participation or severely limiting it with completely virtual or partially virtual meetings and online public participation. The county and town of Berryville were also affected for a couple of months. Now, however, the town of Berryville and Clarke County government are open. Meetings are being held in person and are, as always, open to the public. Masks and social distancing are advised. Staff, the Planning Commission, and Board of Supervisors are addressing all necessary land use decisions. For the most part, though, the land use scene has been relatively quiet, even by Clarke's standards, with only a couple of minor subdivisions and plat amendments over the past several months. I'd like to pick up from George's discussion of Clarke's sliding scale zoning to stress how Clarke not only had a good plan for conservation, but as he referenced, it's the people of Clarke that have continued to support the vision behind that zoning model. The community's ongoing commitment has resulted in a strong land use ethic and policies that ensure that development happens where it's planned in the designated growth areas of Berryville and Boyce, not sprawling out through the countryside. Leaders and residents alike have shown their allegiance to the vision, and the outcome is a landscape that has been subject to relatively little development and a county population that has remained stable over the last 20 years or so at least. This stability has meant that when the standard review of the comp plan and zoning ordinance occurs, changes are made to tweak and strengthen these documents, not to create a major swing in philosophy or practice, despite the many boards in office over the past 40 years. The zoning ordinance provides the regulatory muscle to support the comprehensive plan policies and direction for the county. The ordinance is currently under revision and has been the subject of both Planning Commission and board work sessions over the last couple of years. The revisions maintain the vision and goals and are intended to modernize the ordinance and make it a little more user-friendly for the public. It now has some introductory notes to orient the reader and has been reorganized with a new section devoted to design standards and one for enforcement. The draft is awaiting legal review, which has been delayed in part due to the pandemic. And when it's had that review, it will be ready for public hearing. Due to the long delay since the original workshops, though, there may be additional public outreach or workshops to review the document. Timing is still uncertain. Currently, and in parallel to the zoning ordinance review, regulations that would control Airbnbs and short-term rentals are being considered. The final outcome will be added to the zoning ordinance separately, though. Next year, the comprehensive plan will be on schedule for its 5-year review per state code. The review will likely begin in earnest once the revised zoning ordinance is adopted. So like I said, there's not a lot to talk about here, but I do have another announcement. I love Clarke County and have deeply enjoyed my time working here on land use issues. In fact, having the, as Chris mentioned earlier, I work in both Clarke and Loudoun County, and having the opportunity to see such different counties and how well Clarke has been managed has really given me real good points of reference for my work in Loudoun County. And I will continue to stay involved in stream monitoring and the water quality program when we get that going again. But with a full plate in Loudoun, I have exciting news regarding PEC's Clarke team. Effective immediately, Evan McCarthy from the Loudon team is now our land use lead in Clarke County. And here's Evan to say a few words before we move on to Tracy's presentation.
Thank you, Jem. Thank you, everyone at PEC, for that introduction. My name is Evan McCarthy, and I'm a field representative with PEC in Loudoun County, and will be expanding my work into Clarke, as Jem mentioned. I've been working for PEC for a little over 2 years now, and I work alongside Jem on various land issues to protect and preserve Loudoun's environmental and historical resources. I also encourage residents to become more involved with local decision-making processes. I just want to mention that Clarke is close to home for me. I grew up in Western Loudoun, specifically Round Hill, and have spent lots of time in Clarke. At one point during my childhood, I lived on Anfield Road off Route 340 just outside of Berryville, and have fond memories of picking apples from the orchard in my backyard. During college, I had a couple cross-country teammates that went to Clarke County High School, and I really enjoyed running the rural roads of Clarke with them during school breaks. I just want to mention lastly that I look really forward to strengthening my understanding of conservation work in Clarke by connecting with each of you to learn more about your concerns and your interests. Thanks for joining us today and all that you do to protect Clarke's rural landscape. I'd like to pass it over to Tracy Lind, our conservation staff member in Clarke, where you'll hear a little more about her work. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Evan. I'm looking forward to working with you more in Clarke now. Evan and I also work, and Jem in Loudoun. I'm on the conservation side of things, where I work more closely with landowners to help them protect their land with conservation easements, find resources, whether it's financial resources or connecting landowners with organizations to help them put in best management practices, which means putting in different practices to help with water quality. Also, I work on public space initiatives, and I'm the coordinator of the Blue Ridge Conservation Alliance, which we'll hear about a little bit later. Along with Clarke County, I also work in Loudoun, like I mentioned, and northern Fauquier County as well. So today I'm going to give a brief overview about conservation in Clarke County. Let me share my screen here so you can see my contact information. So we'll take a look at the various approaches that are taken within the county to help protect land and water, and also talk about the importance of public access, which we've especially seen over the past few months. So first, I'd like to start off by just giving a brief overview about the county. So over 26,000 acres of private land is protected with conservation easements. That equals roughly 23% of the entire county. And this success, as Chris had mentioned, has led Clarke to become a model for conservation within the Commonwealth. I'll touch on 3 critical ways that they've accomplished this. And I also want to highlight just that the orange outlines on this map reference easements that were recorded in 2019, so last year. Oh, so first, as far as kind of a critical way that they've accomplished this model, as Jem and George mentioned, the county has historically enacted policies that result in the protection of open space and that promote the rural economy and thriving towns. And by directing growth to the existing towns, they're preventing development into the rural areas, otherwise known as urban sprawl. So another major component of their success was the establishment of the Clarke County Conservation Easement Authority in 2002. Its success initially stemmed from Winky McKay-Smith's vision for the county's role in the protection of private lands. The authority utilizes local, state, and federal funding to help pay landowners for protecting their properties, while also walking landowners through the process of a conservation easement from start to finish. Now, the authority is led by a committee of county residences, and also the county's natural resource planner, Allison Teeter. And in 2019, the authority was recognized by Governor Northam for recording the 100th conservation easement using state funding from the Office of Farmland Preservation Fund. Pictured here is George Orstrom, the chair of the Planning Commission and who you heard from earlier. Clarke County has acquired more easements using contributions from this fund than any other locality within the Commonwealth. Now think of this, because that's even with them being one of the smallest counties in Virginia. So a third aspect or a third component of their success, and certainly not the least relevant, is the ongoing support from the community and landowners. Protection of private lands requires landowners to make the big decision to put their properties under conservation easement. And as Chris mentioned before, this results in a variety of benefits for all of us. So I just wanted to give an example of a landowner that we've worked with. Pictured here is Bill Staples, who some folks might know. And he's owned his family's farm, well, his family has owned Dunbeek Farm for over 100 years. And if you drive by the farm, you'll see a sign recognizing the fact that the farm's protected with a conservation easement with the Virginia Outdoors Foundation and Piedmont Environmental Council. And you'll also see a sign that recognizes them as a Virginia Century Farm. Bill's been an integral part of the agricultural community, and he's been a big supporter of conservation. Now, forms of community support can vary. For example, community members established the Clarke County Conservation Fund with PEC to help increase the amount of land protected within the county. The fund covers costs of putting land under conservation easement, and in some instances contributes to purchasing the land out or purchasing land outright. A group of county residents serve on its advisory committee and work closely with the Conservation Easement Authority, and can also be seen as a resource for information about conservation easements, especially since many of them have protected their land and have experience with that. To date, the fund has helped pay for and cover the cost of 6 properties throughout the county, which are highlighted here in orange, and the dark green just represents all easements within the county. Now, the Conservation Fund and the Farmland Preservation Fund that I mentioned are 2 of many incentives for land conservation. We have federal and state grants, federal tax incentives, state and local programs such as the Local Purchase of Development Rights Program, as well as the Virginia Land Preservation Tax Credit. So I'd just like to touch on 2 that folks might not be very familiar with. First, only 22 out of 95 counties within the Commonwealth have a Purchase of Development Rights Program, which I'll reference as a PDR program. And Clarke is one of them. And this program offers landowners upfront payment for their development rights in order to protect properties with a conservation easement. The county contributes to the program, but it also gives them access to a range of other funding sources, especially some that they might not have access to otherwise. Now, the Land Preservation Tax Credit, that's unique only to the Commonwealth and to Colorado. This incentive allows landowners to receive tax credits for their easement donation. They can apply the credits to offset their own taxes or sell the ones that they don't need for a cash value. Having all of these tools available results in the greatest success for protection of land and water within our region. And Clarke shows this with their utilization of not only a PDR program, but all of these other incentives. Also, as Chris mentioned, PEC has been fortunate enough to be able to adjust in the time of the COVID-19 era. I think surprisingly for a lot of us and positively, although the past few months have brought major challenges and adjustments for everybody, we've seen that people are still interested in learning more about protecting their lands. So if you or anyone you know are interested in learning more about a conservation easement, you can let me or you can let Allison Peter know with Clarke County. So we're happy to get you information, answer any questions, and look at all the ways we can assist, whether it's financially and through technical assistance through the easement process. And we have a variety of ways that we can get you this information. So now I'd just like to kind of switch gears to something that's still related to conservation, but it's a little different. Over the past few or more months, really, we've really learned the importance of access to outdoor public spaces. In Clarke, we went through a time where Shenandoah University's Cool Spring campus was closed, and the Appalachian Trail Conservancy asked people to stay off the AT for a limited time. And residences, we all needed places to go to get out of the house safely. So one of the places that's nearby that was open is Sky Meadows State Park and PEC's Memorial Overlook. This public area provides plenty of space for people to enjoy walking and enjoy a view of some of the highest concentration of protected private lands within the region. And the PEC Overlook can be accessed through Clarke or just adjacent there through Fauquier on Route 17. So not only as a result of what we've seen with the pandemic, but just in general, PEC has always been looking to expand ways for public access and the protection of the view sheds that you see from public places. And as Chris mentioned, Fleetwood Farm is a part of that vision. It's located right on Route 17, almost adjacent, but visible from Sky Meadows, as well as the Appalachian Trail. It's about 2,600 acres, which is one of the largest tracts of unprotected land in our region. Its location and natural, historic, and water resources make it a priority for PEC to see if there's an opportunity to conserve this landscape. Now, the full trail and park experience goes beyond the actual sites that we visit. The adjacent and surrounding landscape create the total outdoor experience. I took this photo at the Overlook from Raven Rocks Trail on the AT before the pandemic. The trail itself is challenging and a beautiful walk in the woods, but the payoff, or one of the payoffs really, is seeing that aerial view of Clarke County and Winchester from above. And so one of the things that we have to remember is that most of the land that we see from overlooks in public places is private. And in some cases, much of it isn't protected. We're not lucky enough to have all places like where the overlook is. So this means that views and outdoor experiences can change over time. This map shows how much of Clarke County is visible from the Appalachian Trail overlooks within the county itself. And the dark brown represents land that is highly visible from the AT, and the green shows lands that are protected. And here I've highlighted Raven Rocks to give you an idea of how much of the land is not protected from that particular overlook. Now, there's a wealth of groups working to protect the natural, agricultural, historic, and scenic lands and waters in the region. And as we all know, there's power in numbers. PEC coordinates the Blue Ridge Conservation Alliance, along with a steering committee of folks from 9 organizations, which are pictured here. We're currently working closely with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy to identify ways to collaborate and leverage each other's resources for the greatest outcome in conservation. We're also currently working on a webinar with the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, Land Trust of Virginia, Friends of the Blue Ridge Mountain, and PEC to introduce conservation easements to landowners and the community, as well as we're organizing an annual virtual meeting about organizational partnership. So stay tuned to hear more on that. The Commonwealth also, in another way, recognizes the importance of protecting our unique and important resources. The Department of Conservation and Recreation serves as the liaison for the Virginia Scenic River Program. Rivers that possess outstanding scenic, recreational, historic, and natural characteristics of statewide significance are identified and designated as a scenic river to help promote outdoor recreation as well as to help with their protection. The 21.6 mile segment of the Shenandoah River that runs entirely through Clarke County is designated as a scenic river. And PEC supports this program by serving on the 50th anniversary committee and promoting the importance of the program. And they actually celebrated their 50th anniversary this year, or are celebrating it. So in summary, we see that private landowners provide public benefits when protecting their lands. We see that robust incentives are required for the greatest outcome in conservation. And also there are a number of options to help cover costs, and in some cases pay for protecting lands. Also, a lot of organizations are doing great work in the region and are coming together to enhance their effectiveness. And really that conservation requires a holistic approach that looks at land, water, private lands, public lands, and equitable access, land use, and the economy. So one last thing I just want to mention, as Chris said before, we've created a virtual tour of Clarke County. So if you're interested in seeing all of the things or examples of a lot of the stuff we mentioned throughout this webinar in real time, in real life, go to pecva.org/Clarke Tour, and you could see a number of spots that we highlight. And just to give you an example, here's stop one, which is of Long Branch Historic Farm, which many may be familiar with. Oops, sorry. So thanks everybody. My name's Tracy Lind, and if you'd like to reach out to me, feel free. I'm the PEC Conservation Representative, as well as the coordinator of the Blue Ridge Conservation Alliance. And now I'll turn it over to Matt Coyle, our local food systems coordinator.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Coyle. I'm the local food systems coordinator here at PEC, and I'm very excited to be with you all today. I'll be talking a little bit about our Buy Fresh, Buy Local program. As many of you know, PEC has been a leader in the Buy Fresh, Buy Local national local food marketing campaign since 2006. It continues to be our long-term strategy to help promote local farms and local food sourcers and restaurants and farmers markets. And this year, we're really excited to say that we've launched a new website that will allow you to go online and search for your local farms and your local farmers markets and restaurants that source locally easily. With this interactive map, you can put in your zip code, select a radius, select farms or farmers markets or restaurants, and find those closest to you. This is the easiest way to find local food near you. And it's also helpful for our farmers. They can go online and create a profile through Market Maker, which is a platform we've partnered with for our Buy Fresh, Buy Local website. And they can create a profile, much like this one that you see on your screen, with their contact info, their website, and About Us section, and connect their social media as well. One exciting thing that we're able to do now is to let our farmers actually sell online directly to consumers using this platform and this website. Clarke County is actually in our Shenandoah Valley chapter of Virginia's Buy Fresh, Buy Local. So as you can see, the URL is on the bottom, and we'll also send out a link to this new website and an email to follow this webinar today. French Price is the value chain coordinator and for the Virginia Cooperative Extension. She's also the Shenandoah Valley Buy Fresh, Buy Local chapter leader. So you can contact her if you are interested in anything Buy Fresh, Buy Local in Clarke County. Her contact is there, and we can also include it in the email afterwards. So Buy Fresh, Buy Local is our long-term solution or promotion efforts for local farmers. But in the short term, since the pandemic started, our dairy farmers have been hit the hardest out of all of our farmers, losing 30 to 40% of their sales that would otherwise go to the school system. So instead of dumping that milk, we've actually been able to raise some money thanks to supporters like many of you on this webinar today. And in only a couple months, we raised over $50,000 to purchase this milk that would otherwise go to the school system and donate it to those most in need at our food banks, including the Christchurch Cares Food Pantry in Millwood. So I've been working with the manager, Deanna Johnson, there since May to ensure that the families that need fresh milk can get it and on a regular basis, and also support our local farmers who need it the most right now, which is our dairy farmers. As you can see here on this map, we have one food pantry and one farm participating in this initiative in Clarke County. And we're actually, we are delivering almost 1,500 gallons of milk every single week to 23 food pantries in PEC's 9-county region. And we hope to continue these efforts through the end of the year. Hopefully, in the long term, USDA will step in and provide a program similar to this one. Also in helping our local farmers, especially our animal farmers, food processing and animal processing has been hard hit by the pandemic as well, exposing vulnerabilities in our local and our national food system and supply chains, would just put a huge demand on our local processors, and they just can't keep up. You can't get a slot right now to process your animal for a year, a full year. And that's just, it's putting a stranglehold on our local farmers who need to get those animals to market to stay in business. So in partnership with the American Farmland Trust, we are doing a feasibility study to build a new facility in the region that would help ease the demand on these local processors and add more competition, which will benefit all of our local animal farmers. We're also continuing our efforts at PEC's community farm at Roundabout Meadows at Gilbert's Corner in Loudoun County. And the mission of the community farm is to help foster an inclusive, equitable food system in Loudoun and the surrounding area. We provide a wide range of educational and volunteer opportunities to community members of all ages, connecting them to the county's agricultural roots. In addition, we do give back by donating 100% of what is grown on the farm to Loudoun Hunger Relief. Originally, we had a goal of 15,000 pounds of fresh produce this year, and we are very excited to say we've surpassed that, and we've donated over 22,000 pounds of fresh produce to the Loudoun Hunger Relief this year. Here's our farm manager, Dana Melby, planting tomato plants. And if you're interested in volunteering, there are socially distant ways to do that, and we're always looking for more volunteers at the farm.
And I don't want to interrupt, but Dana's a Clarke County resident, right?
She is. She
Yeah.
is. And with that, I think we'll
Once again, Clarke is helping everybody else.
hand it back over to Marco and take some questions. Thank you all.